to a Ghanaian king handing someone a hodl stuffed with more than £350,000 to deposit in a bank might seem nothing out of the ordinary. Asante Otumfuo said to the second, who once worked at Brent Council, summoned MacArthur, the Ghana International Bank's second most senior executive, to his multi-million-pound residence in Henley-on-Thames in August 2016 and handed him a bag containing almost £200,000 in sterling as well as $200,000 with consecutive serial numbers. But the bank official felt it inappropriate to ask too many questions. However, the subsequent deposit of the cash at Ghana International Bank triggered a money laundering alert in the City of London and cost Mr. Arthur his job. Mr. Arthur from New Barnet, Hertfordshire, a dual citizen of the UK and Ghana with Ashanti descent, drove to his own home with the cash and then took it in an Uber taxi to the bank's city offices for deposits in the king's account, he told an employment tribunal. Oseiutu II, the holder of a diplomatic passport, told him the cash had been withdrawn from banks in Ghana and brought to the UK. He said in his witness statement he was suspended and subsequently sacked following the incident after an investigation by outside accountant Grant Thornton. He is claiming wrongful dismissal, unfair dismissal, and failure to protect a whistleblower. The bank said he had failed to follow anti-money laundering rules and had violated security policies as he was only insured to carry cash by armored car up to a maximum of £250,000. In his witness statement, Mr. Arthur said he was not able to follow anti-money laundering rules when he accepted the cash because of the king's status. The day after the bank accepted the cash and made the transfer to Jersey, it reported the transactions to the National Crime Agency as suspicious. News of Mr. Arthur's suspension was subsequently passed to the City Watchdogs, the Prudential Regulation Authority, and the Financial Conduct Authority (FCA). Lawyers for Mr. Arthur argued that his handling of the deposit was in line with the way the bank previously handled Oseiutu II's account.
You're welcome back. You're watching Editors Forum. You just heard a report compiled by our colleague Kojo Menu. I still have Fifi with me and Kojo Yangsin. So let me start with Kojo for good reason. You first drew our attention to this story. You picked the Daily Telegraph story and then you put it on our platform and we had a conversation about it. And then subsequently we did this on the Super Morning Show. Looking how the story has unfolded, what are your observations?
There are several observations. The first one is that, as usual, we have somewhat allowed ourselves to be sidetracked from the main issue. Because the Asantehene, such a high-profile personality, has been mentioned in the story, some people have been slightly sidetracked from the more serious issue, which I will remind us of in a moment, and are focusing on the Asantehene and his involvement.
When he's not the story.
At all. Let me be clear. It is a fact that there are restrictions to how much money you can travel with, whether you have a normal passport or a diplomatic passport. It is also a fact that under certain circumstances, those restrictions will be lifted. So nobody should even be asking questions of the Otumfuo and how he came by £350,000. It should not be of a mystery to anyone. Yeah. If you understand the Asante Kingdom and the wealth of the Otumfuo, it shouldn't surprise you that he possesses at any given time.
I was telling somebody that even the people selling spare parts at a doom can go and take that money.
Indeed.
So it's not
several business owners deal with cash, far in excess of that. So it should not shock anyone that the Otumfuo, or in this case, £200,000 and $200,000, as we are made to understand. Yeah. It should not surprise anybody at all. He also owns businesses around the world, including in the UK. So that money, he may not even have traveled with that money. None of it is clear. And none of it should be our focus. Until he is accused of a crime, He is a law-abiding citizen who is well within his rights to call his banker and give him money to go and deposit in his own account for him.
And I have been in the studio with Kojo Yankson when he has given money to somebody to go and deposit in his account.
Yeah.
Kojo in the studio at Joy FM.
That is how banking today should look.
So as Asante giving money.
Misreporting is
so Asante giving money to a banker to go and deposit in his account is not strange at all.
Here in Ghana, banks provide that service.
Yes,
they will come to your home or your workplace and take your money and go and put it in. So nothing wrong there. Nothing wrong whatsoever. But you see, because it's the Otumfuo, we've all been diverted by that, the glittering, glistening name of the Asante King. And we've left behind the real issue. This is the real issue. A bank owned by Ghana, 51% owned by Bank of Ghana, 19% by SNIT, SIC and ADB also owning smaller shares in this bank.
So totally Ghana.
It's a Ghanaian bank basically owned by the government of Ghana, the people of Ghana. This bank is at the center of a money laundering scandal. That's the real story. Our bank in UK is involved in money laundering issues. So how did this all come about? Let's retrace our steps. Joseph Mensah is the managing director or CEO of the bank. He sacks MacArthur for violating their money laundering regulations. Then during the hearing, we learn lots of things because MacArthur goes to a tribunal complaining that he has been unlawfully dismissed. So during this hearing, we learn other things. We learn who the customer was of which transaction caused this sacking. That's the only point at which the Otumfuo's name should have even been mentioned. Beyond that, he has nothing to do with the rest of the proceedings. What else did we learn? We learned that MacArthur took the money, brought it to the bank with the authorization of his boss, Joseph Mensah. Joseph Mensah does not dispute this. Rather, he claims that later something caused him to change his mind. And at that point, he didn't think he should resign for giving authorization. He rather thought MacArthur should be sacked. Okay, and that's the whole game here. But you see, this means that the Ghana International Bank is now under the scrutiny of the City of London. That is not a small thing. Okay, because the Otumfuo may be a person beyond reproach. But what this suggests is that there are customers of this bank who can deposit this amount of money and it will be authorized.
You speak about the investigations by the City of London. What possible fallouts can come out of this investigation?
Well, when you are sanctioned in London, it's serious. Britain has already suffered a massive reputational hit for their lax anti-money laundering provisions. In fact, it is a haven for money laundering. And one of the famous journalists who has been covering the mafia activities.
Can you hold that for me? Let me come back to you and take that. Let me come to Fifi. So, Fifi, we told the story. Do you share Kojo's view that we were sidetracked by the mention of Asante Henne's name and that that's not the story at all?
Well, it's a yes and no answer to that. Number one, because it involves the Asante Hene. You can never tell the story without talking about the Asante Hene.
But he was not the issue.
He was not the issue.
He was only mentioned.
He was part of the issue.
He was only mentioned by MacArthur in his defense.
Absolutely. And in fact, he was the source of the money. And in this situation, we have the biggest kin, if you like, in fact, arguably the biggest kin in Ghana involved in this situation. He's cited in a money laundering situation. In
but
fact,
how is he involved? That's the question.
So the point is, we here.
So the bank is only sanctioning its employee for not following rules.
Yes, and of course, Mr. MacArthur was supposed to have perhaps carried the money using a armored vehicle. I don't know how that was going to have been,
Because he used Uber.
He used Uber. He drove to Asante Hine's house, residence at, is it Henley on Thames, right?
Henley on Thames.
Henley on
Thames.
Henley on Thames.
Don't worry, you and I,
I've not
we
lived
share
there
this
before.
one.
I know of Otumfuo and Kujukrum here in Ghana. So, and the guy goes there, and then I'm even wondering why he didn't drive his own car, or he didn't travel in the Asante Hine's convoy to perhaps deposit the money. But in this situation, of course, if the money is this huge, 350 million. Thousand.
All right, let's clarify a couple of things. First of all, Henley on Thames is outside London. It might be close to where Mark Arthur lives, I don't know. But it certainly isn't close to the bank, which is in the City of London. Okay, Mark Arthur has to go to work in the City of London. And in London, they have done everything to discourage people from driving into the center of the city. So Mark Arthur probably never drives to work. And so his only option, in order to save himself having to pay Uber, the congestion charge and all of that, would be to call Uber.
So,
now the point is this: was that in violation of the bank's regulations?
That's
was there
to the
an
bank.
option of him to call up their locally licensed armored vehicle company to come and pick him up? Was there any such locally licensed armored vehicle company? He says in the tribunal that there wasn't. We are yet to determine whether that is true. But if it is true, that's another thing that the Ghana International Bank is going to be in hot water for. Because you need to have provisions for transporting cash to your location that are safe, secure, and meet the requirements and regulations of the City of London. So that's another thing they're going to question him on. But as to whether it means that the Otumfuo has done something wrong, I don't know how you can extrapolate to that point.
I don't think Otumfuo is facing any charges.
No, not at all. He's actually...
In fact, I think it's Mark Arthur who is in trouble, and in fact, he who is challenging why he has been dismissed. And then we have Joe Mensah, the chief executive.
For unfair dismissal.
Absolutely. You know, Joe Mensah, who is also arguing that, yes, there were reasons, in fact, legitimate reasons why Mr. Mark Arthur had to be given the sack. So
is Joe Mensah allowed to give his blessing to a transaction and change his mind?
You see, that is the question. So in this situation, Joe Mensah is telling the employment tribunal to determine who is telling the truth. In fact, Joe Mensah, who is supposed to be the chief executive, is saying that he changed his mind a day or so after the transaction had gone through. And then we have Mark Arthur saying that you gave your blessing. You gave your blessing to this transaction. So why would Joe Mensah or Joseph Mensah change his mind after he had given approval? So he's also complicit.
And then when Mark Arthur acts in accordance with the authorization that he has given, and then he changes his mind,
how
then Mark gets
sacked for it.
Yes, and you report the gentleman, and you sack the gentleman. In fact, when I was looking at Mark Arthur's profile, apparently he's worked with the bank, I think, since 2006 or so. He's held so many positions within the bank. He's a senior official there. In fact, he's the second most powerful person in the bank, if you look at the rank.
Hierarchy.
Yes. So he knows the rules, and he knew the rules that governed how to transport money and all that. In fact, he said that there had been similar transactions involving the same person and other customers of the bank. So why will you punish him for taking such a decision?
We know that the second day of hearing, the bank went and recanted some of his earlier positions and actually apologized. Tell us about those.
Well, there were a couple of things that the bank had put in a public statement, which they felt the need to apologize for in the tribunal. One of them was that they claimed that the Otumfuo, at the time he transacted this business with their member of staff, Mark Arthur, had an expired passport, diplomatic passport. I don't know how they arrived at that position, and it is still unclear to me what bearing that has on the sacking of Mark Arthur. I mean, I don't know. Does that mean that the Otumfuo's ID was invalid? Is that what it is? So the bank couldn't determine that it was the Otumfuo sitting in front of the... I don't know. Maybe there is some technical reason why it was important.
Yeah, because the relevance
passport, yes,
is in doubt.
It is beyond my understanding. They had to apologize for that. They came back to say, well, that was not the case, and so they apologized for saying that that was the case. Another thing they said was that they believed that this money was the fruit of some dodgy business in Lusaka that the Asantehene had conducted. Again, it is a massive surprise to me to hear the bank apologizing for that, because that is a huge
accusation
claim to make, a huge accusation to make. So the suggestion here is that the MD or the CEO changed his mind about the approval because he received some form of evidence that this deal, this money had come from a dodgy deal. That would mean that this was money laundering. And so he decided to rescind his authorization. How does that even result in the sacking of MacArthur? I still don't know.
And then now you go and apologize and say that information was not correct.
You say that that information was also false. So it would appear that a lot of the information on which they relied to sack MacArthur, they are now saying is false.
Yeah.
How can a CEO of a bank conduct himself in this manner? It is a bit of a worry for me. If really you can make such false accusations about your customers,
and your prized customers as such.
Yes, customers from whom you have received cash on many occasions and never had a problem with it. All of a sudden, you believe that this customer has been doing dodgy deals in Lusaka and bringing the money to you. You know, I don't know, it's a quagmire from which I am waiting to see how Joseph Mensah disentangles himself.
Do you share the view, and this question goes to both of you, that this is internal politics in the bank? The big boss decides to kick MacArthur out, and now he has to engage in post facto rationalization, and that is also not going well. Could you?
That is a possibility. There is another possibility, something that is perhaps even more simple. Perhaps.
Or sinister.
Well, simple and sinister. Perhaps the alert went up when the transfer was made to Jersey. You know, just putting money into the account at the Ghana International Bank, I don't know if that would have triggered an alert, bearing in mind they have done this before. And I doubt there had been an alert on those occasions. They had done this with the same customer. So I don't know if that is what triggered the alert in the city. It is more likely to be the transfer of some of that money to another account in Jersey.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is supposed to be a tax haven.
Yes, but it's not illegal to take advantage of a tax haven. It's just something people frown upon. So anyway, it is possible that that triggered an alert, which then made people ask questions of the bank, at which point Joseph Mensah decided that I'm not going to be the culprit of
take
this
the
one.
fall.
I'll let someone else take the fall. That is a possibility. Okay, again, I'm not going to say this with Chichinga confidence. I'm just going to say that it's a possibility. Okay, it's one of the motives we ought to explore. It could also be some sort of personal thing, you know, that resulted in a dismissal, which is now being justified, like you suggested. But
in 5 minutes, I will be opening the phone lines so that you can join this discussion. The number will be 0302 211 691. 0302 211 691 or 2. I'll be opening the phone lines in 4 minutes. Let me come to Fifi. Do you think this was just internal fight or something more?
Yeah, I think that came up during the court hearing, that personal vendetta could have been the reason for this. Personal vendetta between Joe Mensah, the chief executive, and MacArthur, who was sacked for transferring the money via Uber to the bank. And so
if he has a problem with that.
He actually transported the money, not transferred. He transported it by Uber.
Yes, and so of course, for all you know, and this is conjecture, this is not fact, for all you know, Mr. Mensah was looking for an opportunity to sack MacArthur.
And this presented itself.
And this presented itself. So, okay, so MacArthur, you move this money, you know, by Uber to the bank.
With his approval.
Then you have to go.
Would you say the bank bungled this up?
You see, I'm even surprised, like you were saying, how the bank has had to apologize for a lot of the statements they put out earlier. The fact about, Otumfuo's diplomatic passport, being expired, and so on and so forth. I'm just wondering who gave them these pieces of information to put out in the first place. Now you go to the court and then apologize profusely. In fact, we are told on some occasions they apologized 4 times for one statement they had put out and felt was wrong. So really, I feel there's a lot of politics happening within the bank, and this situation only highlighted the politics in the bank. In fact, you have issues, something must crystallize these issues, and this transfer of money.
Are these apologies born out of a genuine understanding that they put out false information, or they put out information concerning a revered king, and therefore they have to bend over backwards and eat some of the words?
At least one of those claims is verifiable. The one about the passport.
The diplomatic passport.
It's verifiable. So I don't think they would come out and apologize lightly unless some verification has occurred that has made them see that they need to come and apologize for making that statement.
Otherwise, the information will be made public, which
Yes,
will
indeed.
embarrass them.
Yes, indeed. The second one, which is this thing about the Lusaka deal, this is baffling to me. I don't even understand why that came out in the first place. I don't understand.
Had they established that earlier, even?
Yeah, I mean, and if even they believed it, maybe they heard it from somewhere and believed it. Is it the kind of thing you communicate publicly about your customer?
And for a bank and customers,
Yes.
I don't know how that came to pass. I don't know how that particular Lusaka thing, none of it really adds up for me, that the bank would say this publicly without having proof. If you had proof, then yes, maybe you'll explain that, look, this made it impossible for us to maintain our authorization of the transaction because we got proof that this money was fruit of a crime. Yeah, then you put it out. But if you never got any evidence that that was the case, why do you first of all sack someone on that basis, and then secondly put that information out there?
and then run back to a tribunal
To
hearing.
apologize.
Apologize.
I don't get it.
Maybe
Is this typical Ghana?
well,
they may have gotten the information. They may have, been told about this and the possibility of the passport being expired and the possibility of the money
So
being
rumor mongering.
Rumor mongering.
This
So
is a rumor mongering.
financial institution.
Let me go on to the phone lines and talk to Nana Jamfua, who's joined us. Nana, I'm Pofua. If you can hear me, welcome to Editors Forum. What's on your mind?
Right. Good evening, my brother. Well, my name is Nana Amufa Babio.
Okay, Nana Amufa, welcome.
Right. Well, my opinion is first of all, as of what Kojo is saying, by saying that the bank is in the name of Ghana, it's a property of Ghana. So I would be interested for Ghanaians to be more interested on this case, that the Minister of Finance here in Ghana or the government of Ghana should take interest in this case and pursue to even suspend the chief executive. And I am all urging Ghanaians to be more interested on this case, that this is the property of Ghana and they are defaming our reputation out there, and they have violated financial laws or ethics. So this is a case we should take out of the Otumfuo issues, and we have to deal with the experts, the professional, because as a professional, you know what it takes to do transactions. So those of them who are in charge in London or UK, who are able not to do the right thing, must be found in the law.
Nana, thank you for that. Could you would say that's a valid point, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does baffle me that we haven't heard anything from the majority shareholder, the Bank of Ghana, or in fact from the Finance Ministry, under whom such such an institution would come for some supervision. It does surprise me that we haven't heard anything from them. Yes, this is a matter of
But what are we
unlawful
expecting
dismissal.
them to come out and say? Because if the bank dismiss a staff and the staff then goes to an employment tribunal to appeal the dismissal, what should the finance ministry say?
Well, the bank suggests that this dismissal arose from a violation of money laundering laws. You heard David Cameron say that
He cited
Nigeria is fantastically corrupt. Those are our neighbors, our cousins.
Yeah.
All right? So you certainly don't want the next prime minister saying that Ghana is fantastically corrupt. So the government of Ghana that owns this bank ought to take some interest and ought to report to the people on whose behalf they manage this bank what they are doing about this situation, because it is no longer a simple matter of the dismissal of one member of staff. This has now resulted in the opening of an inquiry into the activities of this bank.
Which may lead to some sanctions.
Yes,
with
indeed.
financial
But
implications.
Yes, indeed.
This
So
happened in
we
20
can't.
2016.
That's right. So we can't simply leave this matter with no comment from government. We ought to hear from them what their role is from this point onwards. Whether they are going to do anything to ensure that the reputation of Ghana remains intact, through these proceedings. That if certain individuals have done the wrong thing, they are sanctioned as such, and that the reputation of Ghana is not dragged down into the mud internationally. It's a valid concern. I certainly share Nana's view there, that we ought to hear something from those who are managing this sector on our behalf.
I have Richard from Obuasi. Let me talk to Richard. Richard, how is Obuasi?
Malik, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
And good evening to Kojo and
the man with the deep voice, Fifi Kumsin.
Obuasi is fine. It's fine. Just that we are all waiting for the resurrection of Anglo God Ashanti.
Okay. What's in your mind on the topics we are discussing?
Yeah. Yesterday on Newsfile, my senior my brother, Mr. Kuku Barkon, made a comment that, and he asked some questions that was the money generated right there in the UK, or the money went to the UK from Ghana? And it is a bit amazing. If the money actually was sent from Ghana, then is it that that whole amount of money was carried and airlifted to the UK, and even if it was generated right there in the UK, it is a bit surprising that such an amount of money will be carried in a taxi to a bank. I mean, the whole issue is a bit unclear to some of us, and I wonder.
Maybe, Richard, in the coming days, we may get some clarity on this.
Come again.
I said maybe in the coming days, we may get some clarity on this. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for calling us.
Yeah.
It's interesting. These are the same questions many people are raising, but again, I keep talking about how that might be side-tracking us from the real issue. How Otumfuo transferred the money from wherever he got it from.
It's not relevant to the matters which affect
how
us.
that affects, yes, because Otumfuo hasn't been accused of doing anything wrong here. Let's not forget the government of Ghana airlifted $3 million
to Brazil
in cash to Brazil. So there are circumstances under which you can airlift money. Yeah. And by the way, somebody asks the Otumfuo in some official inquiry, how did you come by this money?
£200,000 and $200,000. It's not Ghana cedis. No. You don't need a whole suitcase to carry that.
Not at all. It will fit nicely into 3 envelopes or whatever. So it's not that much money. But the reality is that as long as we are focused on what the Otumfuo did, we are failing to ask questions about what the institution, the state-owned institution, did. And that is what should concern us the most, because that institution acts on our behalf.
Let me talk to Akwesi Daku, who is calling us from Tema. Akwesi, welcome to Editors Forum. What's on your mind?
Thank you very much. I want to contribute to the program.
Please do.
Yes, I will just pick it up from where Kojo Jansen left off. I think we need to ask more questions about how our state-owned institution acted on behalf of this country. Okay. Because I think that they are putting our country's name in the mud, and the sort of politics that they are playing is not good. I work in a bank myself, and we have premium customers. We go to them to take huge sums of money from them, and I don't know how come the bank is trying to do these things to their employee, and at the same time trying to drag the name of Otumfuo in the mud. This is not. I'm sure this is not the first time Otumfuo has given them such money. They have done this transaction over and over again. And now another issue that the bank has to come to answer is as to how they got to know about the money or the transaction Otumfuo did before coming up with this money. Kojo said they said the money came from a deal somewhere in Kenya or Assam, to be corrected. How did they know? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akwesi Daku from Tema. You can also call us. The number is 0302-211-691 or 0302-211-692. There are two numbers out there. You can dial in of them, make a contribution on this show. Could you, there's somebody who agrees with you on this one? I was expecting they would raise a disagreement with Fifi Kumse. and so, Fifi, you heard the callers. They say Asantehene is not the issue. This is normal practice that if you have money like Kojo, people will come to your house and take the money and go and deposit in the bank. So this shouldn't raise any eyebrows at all.
Okay, well, yes, of course, that is true. But in a situation where you can't tell how the money was transported, whether or not this 200,000 pounds sterling, $200,000 were within a certain suitcase and, moved to the UK from Ghana and later given to MacArthur, who used an Uber to transport this to the bank. We really can't tell the circumstances under which the money was transferred. In fact, there's a threshold when it comes to how much money you could transport to any country like that.
But a threshold which can be waived depending on the circumstance. Yes. Let me pick some calls. Let me pick Richmond Bosman from Kumasi. Richmond, if you can hear me, how is Kumasi? What's your contribution?
Everything is good here, Malik. Malik.
I can hear you. Go on.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go on.
Last year, February last year, Otumfuo sent, there was a transaction of £650,000 in that same bank. It never came out. So I feel some elements of politics with respect to this very issue.
But how do you know about this £650,000? You work in the bank?
We had a lot of information about this, and we wouldn't want it to get into that muddy state. I feel so ashamed with respect to how the authorities they came out with this information. I feel so ashamed.
Bossman, thank you. Let me pick Tony. Tony is our last caller, and Tony is also calling from Kumasi. Tony, what's on your mind?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening,
Tony.
Tony
calling from Kumasi. Malik, I like your shoe. I like your shirt.
Thank you.
This whole issue about this 350,000 pounds money laundering, I don't know. The circumstances behind this money is what I don't understand. Is it possible for a banker in a bank in UK to carry or to transport a money in an Uber car to a different resident or a different bank? Is it possible? So that makes the whole issue a little bit confusing because it's like they are hiding some information from the public. I think they need to come again. Let's understand how the money gets out of the bank into the Uber car and being transported to another destination. How possible?
Okay, the fact is that the money didn't get out of a bank. The money was given to the banker by the Asantehene himself, and then it was the banker at his residence. It was the banker who took the money home, and then from his home, he then took an Uber and then took the money to the bank and deposited it.
In this case, is it allowed? Is it allowed? That is what we should be focusing on. Is it allowed for that process to go in?
Thank you, Tony. Let me talk to Kofi Tete. I said Tony was my last caller. Let me pick this one. Kofi Tete is calling us from Hohoi in the Volta region. Kofi, welcome to Editors Forum. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
One place I want to be sure of, they are talking about the serial numbers. They are quoting about the serial numbers because this is a World Bank. They can talk about where the serial numbers from. This is the first money people are showing on the screen.
I don't understand what you're saying, Kofi.
I'm saying that they quote about the serial number. According to Biffy, people were talking about the serial number. Yeah. The serial number, bank, this is a World Bank. The bank identify where the money is from. So you know what you
I'm struggling to get the point that Kofi is making. But Kofi, thank you for your call. I'm sure next week, please join us on this show. Unfortunately, I don't have any much time left. Kojo Yangsin, host of Super Morning Show. It's been great having you. Fifi Kumsen, who broke his virginity on the show. It's been an honor to have you. They have been my guests, Kojo, Fifi. My name is Malik Abbas Dabu. God willing, we will bring you another exciting discussion on Editors Forum. Until then, bye-bye.